three-piece title. Divination, which is to try and figure out the unknown, the future.
I don't know that word.
You do when you take the bones.
Even Yudaini.
I wrote it on my exam.
Probably Mendel didn't misspell it. I'm just posting it. Fortune telling.
Right.
That's what you wrote. That's what.
By the way, the animal. What is the Yudaini? Rashi writes in Chumash, Yudaini. You have to take the bone of a chaya. Sheshmo Yodua. The name is known. It's not meant to be Yodua. It's Yodoya. The name is Yodoya. We read it as the name is known. It's funny. So why is it's known or it's not known? People say it's well known because nobody knows about it, right? But it's actually Yodoya. But what's this animal? This you mentioned it. The Sefer HaChinuch, it was 800 years ago, says he found the manuscript from the Gaonim, going back a couple hundred years before him. That there's a type of beast which looks just like a human, face, arms, feet, and everything. But it's attached to the ground via. Did we do that? Did we?
We touched on it in the Sunday morning.
Through its belly button, it's attached to the ground.
Monkeys here.
And anything that it can reach, it tears apart. The only way you can kill it is if you have to shoot from afar via an arrow or a bullet to cut the cord. Thing. It's a fascinating.
It's the between Chai and.
So Rashi, it's based on a pasuk in Eiv where it says. The pasuk refers to them, and Rashi says min odom. It's a type of species of humans. It's not humans. It's a variational species of humans, and that gets back to the other shir we had about reverse Darwinism. We're spoken about everything almost. Now, so I'm running out of topics. All right,
are you going to be running out of topics?
Well, we can revisit them, give a different spin. Torah is
endless.
Numbers are different.
Some of these guys are.
At one point, you spin a wheel and just start over.
Yeah.
But you know what they say? A rabbi, a good joke he can say once every 5 years. A good story once every 2 years. A good vart twice in the same speech. All right. So divination, and then the Gorel of the Vilna Gaon. We'll discuss what that is. And the third thing is the Rogachover coming from nowhere, and we'll explain what that's all about. Okay, so we'll go straight into it. The Torah says twice in the Chumash you can't follow the ways of the people of Canaan, the ways of the black magic, the black arts, fortune-telling, divination, magic, communing with the dead, etc., etc. The Torah is very serious about it. Some of these crimes carry the death penalty, some carry chorus, some carry malchus. It's highly serious. And the Eibush, in fact, says that one of the reasons I'm kicking out all the Goyim from Israel is because they were doing these things. Eretz Yisrael cannot tolerate it. Fine. One of these things is referred to as nichush. Nichush is to divine. What we mean by that is that you make a sign to yourself and say, if A happens, then it will be fortunate for me to go down this path.
We do this every
and
Sunday.
If B happens, if B happens, then I'm going to go down a different path. Now, we may discuss if flipping a coin is similar to this. But Pashtus Nichush is not like flipping. Nichush, when you divine, is when you really feel that based on this sign, this is going to lead to something to happen to you. Whereas flipping a coin, we'll see, according to most people, doesn't fall under this issue, even though you will decide your fate based on it, because you're not linking any substance to the side of the coin that it lands on. You just made a sign for yourself. But we'll get back to that. And let's see how this relates to this week's parasha. So we begin with number one. Number one is a copy from a Gemara in Chulin, Daf Tzadikei. The Gemara says a story, and the Gemara analyzes the story. And this is where the whole discussion begins. And Rabbi said it's very interesting. We're also going to get into writing to the Igris and Mitzvah Shem if we have time, because it's all part of this. If you write to the Igris and you open it and you decide your future based on that, it could mamish be a problem of divining. We'll see some of the loopholes and why it could be okay, and why in fact it might even be a shtickle mitzvah according to some. Some will hold it's naveira. I mean, there's opinions across the board. The Mesnagdim will say it's forbidden, obviously. The Mishachistim will say it's a mitzvah, and then and others will say chveis. Whatever, however you feel your hiskashrus is. Okay, let's get back to number one. Says the Gemara story. Rav Havaka Ozel Lebei Rav Chanan Chasnei. Rav was heading to his son-in-law, Rav Chonon. He lived across the water. It was a safe distance between the son-in-law and the father-in-law. There was a river in between. How do you cross? Not via a bridge, a ferry. Now, usually this ferry was a pain and a half. You had to prearrange it, and it was a schlep until they came. It was a major hassle. Rav arrives by the dock, and the ferry is almost by, has almost already come. Rav was very excited. He sees the ferry heading to him. Omar, Rav says, Mabra ka'asi la'apay, the ferry's coming to me. Today's my lucky day. Yoyme toeva lagav, there must be a good day on the other side by my son-in-law's home. It must be some celebration. Azal, Rav went to the other side. Come above, he stood by the gate of his son-in-law's home. Oidik means he gazed. Bebiza is a crack, the dosha of the doorway. He looks through. Chazi, and he sees chayusa, there's animals. Detali, which are hanging from the roof. They're aging steaks and salami. They're aging meats. This is an old practice. Meats hanging from the roof. That's what Rav sees. So Taka, there's some barbecue, big barbecue happening over here. Taraf above, Rav knocks on the door. Nafuk. They come out, they see Rav's there. So you can imagine the whole house empties out. The whole house empties out. Also, Kula Almalape, the whole place came to greet Rav. Also, Tabochi Nami. The butchers who were dealing with the meat, they also left the kitchen. They came out to greet Rav. Now, the Gemara there is discussing a sugi and halacha, which is referred to as Basar Shenis Ala Min Ha'ayin. If you have kosher meat and then, you left it on a table, you come back 2 days later, how do you know it's the same meat that's there? Someone could have taken it, replaced it, and you wouldn't really eat such a piece of meat unless you have some identification that you can identify it. What?
Plumbed it.
Yeah. So that's the sugya. By the way, Rav is the one. It's a machlokes in the Gemara, by the way, and in the Rishonim about, do we actually take this concern seriously, and how serious do we take it? Rav was the main instigator of this prohibition.
Uber Eats does take it serious.
Well, you're right. We have to have a simon, by the way. By the way, if
and
the
something
hechsher
that's cooked is a different thing than raw meat.
Okay, right.
But
right.
besides that, they do wrap it perhaps anyways.
Yeah.
But it doesn't need two wrapping because it's cooked.
Okay. There's also a difference, right? If it's milchiks or fleishiks, if it's milchiks, the concern is much less. But either way, says the Gemara, Loy alim Rav eine minei. Rav didn't move his eyes from the meat. Right? Everybody came out to see Rav. Rav is still keeping an eye on the steaks hanging. He's still looking at the steaks. He couldn't believe the size of that. It was like a 50-pounder. Anyhow, Arma lahu. So Rav told the butchers, you all left the kitchen. Who's keeping an eye on the meat? Eichu hashta safisu lahu isura lebnei bras. You were about to feed tray for meat to my grandchildren, my daughter's kids, because you would have gone back in the kitchen, you would have served that meat. As far as you're concerned, nobody was watching it while you all left the house. As far as you're concerned, who knows if it's the same meat, and you would have all served it to my grandkids. So he gave the butchers a bit of a rebuke. Now, the funny thing's like this. Everybody ate the meat there because at the end of the day, Rav did keep an eye on it. Rav was the only one that didn't. Loy achol Rav mahu bisur. Rav didn't eat the meat. So ironic. Rav was the only one that could really attest that it was kosher.
Why didn't he eat
He
it?
dafka didn't eat. Okay, good. That's the end of the story. So frek the Gemara. My time. Why didn't Rav eat it? I mishum ilumi. Is it because people had taken their eyes off the meat? But but it wasn't. He kept his eye on it. He knows better than anybody. Why he didn't trust himself. Elo denachish. It's because Rav made an omen for himself. When Rav saw the ferry coming, he said, the ferry's coming. That means today's my lucky day. It means there's a celebration by my son-in-law's home. So when he came there and he saw that his omen proved to be correct, he didn't want to, he almost penalized himself and didn't want to partake of the meat. Frek the Gemara, that can't be the pshat. V'ha'am my Rav, because Rav himself elsewhere said, Kol nachash, any divining, Divination. She'ena Eliezer Eved Avram. That's not like Eliezer. Or Ke Yonasan ben Shaul, or like Yonasan. Einoi Nichush is not a Nichush, is not a Nachash. What that means is like this. We have a story by Eliezer that he made an omen. How did he choose Rivka? He said, Eibish, I'm making a sign. I'm going to ask her for a drink. If she offers me, and then on her own she offers the camels, I know it's the girl. Rivka comes out. She passes the test. He doesn't even ask her who she is, right? First, he gives her the bracelets. He makes the marriage. He says, you're the one. By the way, who's your father? He married her to Yitzchak on the spot because he trusted his test. The test worked. The omen proved successful. What's the story by Yonasan ben Shaul? The Yidden then were suffering very much from the Plishtim. Shaul suffered from the Plishtim throughout his kingdom, which was only about 2.5 years. Ultimately, Shaul was killed during a war against the Plishtim. But while Shaul was still alive, his son...
Together, right?
Sorry?
Him and David together.
Yeah. A couple of his sons. Now, Yonasan, at some point of time, he had separated from his father's, the main group of soldiers, and he was hanging out doing some guerrilla tactics. It was just him and his attendant. And the two of them see, not too far from them, there's a... What's it called? A stallion of... What's it called? A group of soldiers.
Cavalry?
What?
Battalion.
A battalion of soldiers, sorry. A battalion of soldiers. And Yonasan tells his attendant as follows. We're going to make a sign. We're going to call out to them. If they say, guys, come out, come join us, we're going to pounce, use the element of surprise and kill them all. If they say, halt where you are, we'll come to you. We don't touch them, fakert, we scram.
That's divination.
Hold on, he made the sign. And he said, we're going to follow the sign. Hold on, good.
Strategy.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Guys. Don't make me completely irrelevant, please. He calls out, and the guards say, yo, come join us. Yonasan said, that's our sign. The two of them went, they killed the whole battalion of soldiers, the whole guard. So Rav said that Eliezer and Yonasan, they did real nichush. They made a sign, and they acted upon the sign. They said, if this happens, we will do A. If not, we'll do B. And they mamish followed the sign all the way through. But in the story of Rav and his son-in-law, he didn't follow through anything. He was going to his son-in-law's house regardless, right? Look at Rashi on the side.
That would be a good day.
Kol Nacha, exactly. He didn't act based on it. It was just a simon. So Rashi says on the side of number 1, Kol Nacha she'enoi, soymechalav mamish. If you don't rely on it like Eliezer said, Im tishakeni, if she gives me to drink, adaber ba, I will speak to her. More than that, I'll choose her. And im lav, if not, I bechlal won't even consider her. And Eliezer acted based upon the sign. Rav in the story didn't. He just said, it's going to be a big celebration. Okay, so he was right, but he didn't decide anything based on that. So the Gemara says it doesn't make sense that he would penalize himself and not eat from the meat. So says the Gemara, Ella rather Sudas Rishus Havoi. Pshat was, it wasn't a Sudas Mitzvah, it wasn't a wedding, it wasn't a bar mitzvah meal, it wasn't a pesabris, it was time a barbecue. V'Rav loy mishani Sudas Rishus. You would never catch Rav sitting by a barbecue eating a steak. Okay. Continues the Gemara. Rav bodik b'mabra. Rav would check by the ferry. Says Rashi, I don't have it on the sheet, but what that means is that when Rav would come to the shore, to the dock, he would decide what he would do that day, if he would travel or not, based on where the ferry was. If the ferry was far away, he said, I ain't going, he'd go back home. If it was close, it would go. So this sounds much more serious. Rav would decide what he would do based on the boat. Now you could just say the boat was far away, so I didn't have time to go, right? But obviously the Gemara wouldn't record that, because that's just obvious. It's more serious. It sounds like Rav Bodik, he would actually make a simon. Shmuel Bodik Besafra. Shmuel would open a book. And based on what is said in the book, that's what he would do. So here you have a source of writing Tigris. Okay, well that's right. Well, let's see. Don't jump to any conclusions. You can't just read a few words of Gemara and jump to conclusions. Rabbi Yochanan Bodik Biyanuch. Rabbi Yochanan would search by a child. He would ask a kid, "What are you learning?"
Right.
Psoik li tzukecha. Tell me your pasuk. Like we have many Mordechai, exactly.
That's not
The only thing is Mordechai wasn't planning, didn't act based on it. Rabbi Yochanan would. And the Gemara says a story. Rabbi Yochanan, who lived in Eretz Yisrael, had major respect for Rav, who lived in Bavel. Rav passes away. Rabbi Yochanan writes a letter to Shmuel, who's in Bavel, and he refers to Shmuel as his contemporary. To Rav, Rabbi Yochanan referred to as my teacher. To Shmuel, he said, "You're my contemporary." Shmuel was offended. V'amar, chopped liver. So he sent Rabbi Yochanan a 50-year calendar that he made. He said, "I know my stuff when it comes to the cycle of the moon and everything." So Rabbi Yochanan said back, "Okay, a little bit of arithmetic, a bit of mathematics, that ain't going to cut it." So Shmuel sent back a whole lot of information about treifas, questions and animals, and Rabbi Yochanan was quite impressed. He said, "You know what? I'm going to head to Bovel to meet this guy Shmuel." On the way, Rabbi Yochanan asked one of the kids, "No, what are you learning?" And the kid quoted the pasuk of "My servant Shmuel has died." The pasuk in Nach. Shmuel is dead. So Rabbi Yochanan said, "All right, I ain't going to Bovel." Says the Gemara, Shmuel didn't die. Shmuel did not die. But the Eibush to warn Rabbi Yochanan to hear the pasuk, so he shouldn't make the big journey. But Rabbi Yochanan decided what to do based on what the kid said. He mamish acted according to the sign. So the last three things is really a problem. Rav, Shmuel, and Rabbi Yochanan. Well. So first of all, the story of Rav and his son-in-law, the Gemara clearly says, was nothing. Right. But the Gemara did say that Eliezer and Yonason did nichush. Rav clearly said that. And then the Gemara indicates and intimates that Rav, Rabbi Yochanan, Shmuel were also all guilty of this.
Even
so
though
obviously,
not in the story.
What?
Even though not in
exactly,
the story.
exactly. But generally, exactly.
Right.
Right. So this whole thing is screaming Dorsheni. Explain me. Okay, so we come to number 2 is a big debate between the Rambam and the Ravid, and the Ravid here uses very choice words against the Rambam. Let's see. Now the Rambam seems to be saying nothing novel.
Nothing what?
Nothing novel. What the Rambam is going to say seems to be what we just saw in the Gemara. But we'll see the Ravid is very unhappy. Says the Rambam in number 2. Ein menachshin kegoyim, you can't divine like goyim, and it says lois anachshu. For example, he says, if you say, my bread fell out of my mouth, my stick fell out of my hand, so I'm not going to that place today, because if I go, I won't be successful. Or if somebody says, a fox passed by my right hand, I'm not leaving my right side, I ain't leaving the house today. Because if I leave the house, I will encounter a deceitful fellow. So too people, right, black cat, they hear tzif ha'ifus. You hear the bird chirping and you say, oh, based on the chirping, this will happen or this won't happen. Or based on the chirping, it's good to do A or it's bad to do B. Another example, people say, shech that chicken that cuckooed in the evening. Or shech the chicken that called out like a rooster. Fine. Where did the Rambam get these examples from? It's from a Gemara in Sanhedrin where it speaks about the details of nichush and all the other types of black hearts. But the Rambam then continues, we're still in number 2 in the Rambam's words. V'chein, and so too, ha'meisim la'atzmai simonim, if someone makes signs for himself, im yera likach v'kach, that if this and this happens to me, I will do this and this, and if not, I won't, like Eliezer, v'chol kayotze b'dvarim, anything similar, I call also it's forbidden. So the Rambam clearly learns what Eliezer did was forbidden. And v'chol ha'oisa ma'isem mipnei dovim b'dvarim elu, and if you act upon it, like you get malchus. What the Rambam means by that is that technically, in order to get lashes, you have to do an action. In Gemara, there's a machlokes. Some Tanoim hold as long as you violate a loisasa, you get malchus. We paskin, you have to violate it through an action, and that's how the Rambam paskin. So the Rambam's saying like this: if you decide to do something or not to do something, either way you violate the lav. To get malchus, you actually have to do something. So let's say by the case of the fox, since the fox passed by me, I ain't leaving the house, you won't get malchus because you were passive, but you did violate the loisasa. That's what the Rambam says. Where does he get it from? The first half is from a Gemara in Sanhedrin. The second half we saw in number 1. It's a Gemara in Chulin. Comes the Ravid. Look at the Ravid number 2, the small letters, the Ravid. Jump to the 4th line where it says Aleph, the small print. Zeh shibush gadol. This is a major blunder that the Rambam made. Shahari dover ze mutter v'mutterhu. What Eliezer did was mutter. You're allowed to make your own signs. V'ulai perhaps hiteyu haloshen shera. Says the Ravid, maybe the Rambam made a mistake based on what he saw in Chulin. Kol nachash she'ena keliezer and kiyenis and ena nachash. The Gemara said anything different than Eliezer and Yonason is not real nichush. V'husar, the Rambam thought shele inyan isra nemar. It was speaking about prohibition. Which, by the way, that seems to be what the Gemara does seem to be saying. Rav didn't do anything wrong because only what Eliezer and Yonason did is real divination. Says the Rav Veloy, it's b'chlal not what the Gemara meant. Ella, what did the Gemara mean? Hachikam, what the Gemara meant was einoi roi lismechalov. That if it's not like Eliezer and Yonason, it's b'chlal worthless even to rely on. What they did is worthwhile to rely on. Now, how this makes sense in the Gemara, we'll get back into a moment. I don't want to focus on that yet. But look at the last line. How could the Rambam say Eliezer or Yonason who are tzaddikim that they did a sin? If they were here, mafki pulsa denura la'ape, they would cast lightning bolts onto the Rambam's head. Now, if Eliezer was here, the Rambam said Eliezer did Aveire. Says that right, if Eliezer was here, he would tell the Rambam what he thinks.
Good question.
Well, what about...
What we have here is a conundrum. On the one hand, how could you say Eliezer sinned? On the other hand, what do you mean? Rav said it in number one. So the Rambam is just quoting the Gemara. So... in other words, if you're going to defend Eliezer, then you have a problem with number one. Because in number one, the Gemara did seem to say Eliezer and Yonason did real divination. Now, what's funny is the Rambam doesn't mention Yonason, which is highly significant. He only mentions Eliezer, which is highly, highly significant. Right. So, and we'll see the difference that makes.
Eliezer wasn't Jewish.
What about Rav Shmuel and Rav Yechon?
But why does
You
that
have to get to that too.
He was Eig.
Right, the Medrash Picture business says, yeah. He was Nimrod's son, or Nimrod's servant, two opinions. Chom Alein.
Or Aaron Cutler, which actually
No, but Canaan was cursed.
He's the runaway.
Eliezer was Canaan. I don't
No,
know.
Eliezer was either
He
Enoch
comes
or
down.
Canaan, maybe was Canaan Alein. The Pirkei Eliezer says that he was a son of Nimrod. Nimrod gave him as a gift to Avram.
When?
Eliezer became Oig. But there were many Oigs. Every king of Bashan was called Oig. Eliezer went to Gan Eden alive, by the way.
What was the driver's explanation though on that?
I want to explain it. It's there's a medrash in a few places that gives a list of those that went into Gan Eden alive, that they're never buried.
Discussed that.
There were two women. There was Sarah, Usher's daughter. There was Bisia, Paris. Sorry? Shub and Levi, right? Eliyahu. It says Mashiach in one place. Mashiach. What?
The phone book of the ones that made it there.
Exactly.
Extension, yeah.
Was either 9, 10, or 11. Very few people. Rabbi Yehuda Hanossi had a son.
Who's the one that's
And Eliezer
that's in the Mars Marbella that we learned about?
Eliezer, we saw a story that when
That's
Rabbi
Eliezer,
Noah
you
went in,
said, no?
Eliezer was guarding
We
it.
spoke about
Right, Eliezer's guarding it, right.
So that's the portal to go through.
Yeah.
Also, we're mixing too many shurim now. Right. Okay, hold on.
That was
So,
a sure we had.
yes. So we're going to see 4 approaches in this. One of them is going to be the Radak.
Sounds like the portal.
The second one is going to be the Misnagdim. We actually have a Chiddush twist on it.
Ironically.
The third will be the Ran. And the fourth is going to be the Rogachover. It's going to blow us out of Mama's going to blow us out of the water.
We'll go straight to him. Short time tonight.
We'll do it quick.
No quick.
We'll do it.
Andy's going to hang in there.
No, we'll do it quick. Thursday night's a journey.
Yeah.
Anyhow, listen, I'm going as fast as I can.
No,
To see the Radak, look at number 5. Number 5 is a comment of the Ramah in his Sefer Darchei Moshe on the Torah. It's on the Torah, on the Siman, where the Torah speaks about the laws of black magic. And the Ramah quotes Harav Reb David Kimchi, the Radak. The Radak doesn't usually make it into the Ramah's forum. The Radak, Reb David Kimchi, was a grammarian and a meforish on Tanakh. He lived in Provence, in Narbonne. He was born around the year 1160, and he was a great grammarian, one of the greatest. He wrote very, very important Sfarim on Diktuk, and he wrote a fascinating pirush on Chumash and Nach. On Nach, his commentary is very popular. On Chumash, it's not as popular just because there's so many other Rishonim, so it doesn't get the proper focus that it really should. But the Radak on the story of Yonasan and Shmuel has a long piece about this. Says the Ramah, Reb David Mikimchi Herich Bozeh, he is Meirich about it, Bepirush Shmuel in his Pirush on Shmuel in the story of Yonasan. The Kosav and the Radak writes like this. Now I will tell you, I read the Radak a few times. The Radak it's very tricky to figure out what he's saying, and my understanding of it was actually quite different than the Ramah's. As the Ramah would say, he doesn't think too highly of me either. But look what I'll tell you. We'll see how the Ramah understood it, and I'll tell you my understanding of it. But says the Radak, says the Ramah, the Kosav, the Radak says like this: the mutter likach la'atzmoi siman be'eze dover. You're allowed to make your own simonim, no problem. Like the Ravid, who says you're allowed to make your own simonim, no problem. Rak, however, im kvar nasa hadover osur. If something already happened and you want to know was that good or bad, then you can't make a simon for yourself. For the future you can, to decide what to do, but to determine if something in the past was positive or negative, you can't do. Now says the Ramah, that's counterintuitive. What?
How would you do so? It passed, so how am I going to say now that that was...
You make a sign to know if it was good or not. Well, there's future and the past. No, you can make a sign for the past. You
sign will happen, but that will make what you did in the past good or bad.
Or what happened
hold
in the
on.
past, good or bad.
Well, you get that?
No.
You were looking at me, you were looking the same way.
How did
what
something
comes
that
out
happened in the past?
Yeah.
If something
you're making
happened
this-
in the past...
Later.
Yeah, what Rob...
If I wake up on the right side of the bed, that
us.
means
That
yesterday was a good day. If I wake up on the left side of the
There's a
day, yesterday
lashon
was
of
a
the
bad day.
Rambam.
Future sign.
Here, I'll tell you, there's a lashon of the Rambam. I have the Rambam. I don't have it on the paper. The Rambam says, if somebody says, wow, this house that I bought, ever since I bought it, things have been great. So that's called, the Rambam says, making a simon of something of the past. So says the Ramah that the Radak says to go in the past is a problem and the future is okay. Says the Ramah, pardon me, that doesn't make sense. It's not like what the Rambam himself says below. The Rambam says the other way around. Shekasav, the Rambam writes, She'im lokach simun, if you make a sign, b'masha hoya, for something that was shorit phase, more reason to permit it. So the Ramah is saying that there's a kind of a debate over here. The Rambam and normal logic would tell you that the future is much more of a dangerous area than the past. To decide what to do is really divination. And yet from the Radak it comes out, to decide the future is okay, like the Ravid said, to make your own simonim, but to go towards the past is a problem. Continues the Ramah, Vedas...
There's one problem with that. Because the Ravid talks about, the Rambam is talking about Eliezer. That's something that happens in the future.
No, but
the Ravid's arguing with him.
the Ravid holds the
About
future
something
is
in the
okay,
future.
which is okay. Which means the Ravid might hold the past is a problem, like the Radak. In fact, look what he says right here. V'das harav Reb David Kimchi is like the Ravid. The Ramah puts the Radak with the Ravid, and V'das hasman kedas harambam. So the Ramah puts the Radak with the Ravid. Taka, it's exactly what you're saying. That the Ravid holds for the future is okay, but for the past, the Ravid might hold as an issue like the Radak. I will just tell you that I looked at the Radak a number of times. It seems to be very contradictory, but I'll just tell you my simple understanding of the Radak's like this. The Radak says, real nichush is only when it's like a voodoo sign. A black cat, a fox, the chickens cooing, things which really, are
It'll make sense.
There's more than just doesn't make sense. It's
Paranormal
black
stuff.
magic.
Fairies
Right.
farm, not going
Theme.
on.
No.
Black
Hold
magic
on.
theme.
It's
No,
not
that
the
would
word
be-
to make
that's
sense or
not-
not. It's
yeah.
a word
Black
that
magic
it's
theme.
rooted in paganism, in black magic voodoo, and people think that the signs actually affect the future. But the Radak says stump to make a sign out of a fairy or to flip a coin or anything, that's not a problem at all. But in that gufa, he says, it's not a problem. If you're doing it in the future, then it's worthwhile. If it's something about the past, it's worthless. That's what the Radak says. He doesn't say the past is a problem. He says the difference of the past and the future is about things which...
That makes perfect sense.
Right. And therefore he says that you know what the pshat in number one is, and this is how what the Ravid meant as well. The Gemara meant like this. Maybe Rav didn't want to eat the meat because he was worried he had done divination. The Gemara's point is what? He Bechlal didn't do divination at all. Because he learns that the divination of Rav was that since everybody left the house to come greet me, who's watching the barbecue, who's watching the meat? Rav thought that itself is a sign, right, that there's something wrong in the kitchen. So it was like, it's a sign of the past. And therefore the Radak says the Gemara's point was that Rav had nothing to worry about because that Bechlal had no substance to it. When does Nichush have substance? When you do it to the future like Eliezer and Yonason. But neither Rav or Eliezer was in the prohibition element of Nichush, because that's only if it's like a black magic voodoo thing.
Why didn't
Rav-
he eat it?
So the Gemara says it was because it was just Stam Abar, there's no mitzvah to it. So I'm just pointing out that my reading of the Radak is very different than the Ramah's. Obviously I'm not arguing with him, but...
So I was worried that sometime in the past they left the kitchen also, and he wasn't there. And he didn't want
He doesn't
to.
even
no,
know
that
that.
he
No,
wouldn't
he's saying it's a
have
bad
his grandkids in
sign.
it.
He was just saying the fact that they all left gives him a bad feeling about... So the Radak says if you make something in the past, it's worthless.
No bad feeling about the past. About something
If
that
you
already
want
happened.
nichush to b'chlal of any
straight,
meaning, it's
you would
only in the
never let his
future.
grandkids.
But not that either of those would be prohibited. It's only prohibited if it's foxes and black cats and things like that. Anyhow, either way,
Right, this was not
that's
Because there was cats.
and
not
fine.
buffalo.
That's number one. Approach number two. Okay, that's the only one which is a little, I would say, that whole Radak's still a little bit in the air. The other paths that we have are very clear, and the Mitzvah Shem will be fully understood. Path number two is the path of the Misnagdim. Two big Misnagdim, but they have a Chiddush on, they have a Chiddush twist.
Maskan of that part, that it's not real nichush if it's only that. That was your own part. I didn't
No.
know.
I'm saying what the Radak says. It happens to be the Ramah quotes the Radak quite differently.
The Ramah learned that it's
The Ramah says exactly it's an
an
issue.
argument.
Right.
What does the Ramah
The way
say?
you said it sounds a little clearer.
I'm just quoting the way I see the Radak's words. Apparently, the Ramah saw something else in the Radak's words. The Radak is a long paragraph. You're all free to go check it up in your own
But
time.
could it be the Radak is saying the reason why it's bad to look back? If you're doing like going forward,
No, he said because there's no substance to look
but there
back.
is, because the danger in it, why it would be a sin though, is because there's no substance to look back. The only thing you can do is doubt yourself, and it can be very problematic if what you're saying is you can be in a horrible mood. It can change. It could affect. If you're going to go and say, how am I going to go forward? It can help you over the mountain. It can and you'll make a right or a left based on it. But if I'm looking back and I'm sitting there, it's already gone. It's history. It's done. But all you're going to do is say, oh my gosh, that was bad. That was bad. That was bad.
but-
You're going to
but
be a mess, and you're
He
going to
learns
be
that
counterproductive.
Rav, he learns that Rav by the meal looked back. He looked at them all leaving the house, and that was a simon to that maybe something earlier went wrong.
Nothing
in the
to
kitchen.
do with the boat.
No, but the Gemara
boat ride?
ultimately says
the
that-
Gemara says it was
No,
the boat ride.
no. The Gemara doesn't say clearly. He learns it more
Gemara says he was
differently.
excited about
But even he has to agree that the Gemara's conclusion was Rav did nothing wrong. So to say that going back is a problem, I mean, the Ramah's
Right, then how
understanding
could
of
he
Klal
say-
is Ogishlogan from the Gemara itself. Anyways, I don't want to go more into that. I don't know. But I had to quote it just because, I don't know what. Anyhow, path number two is the path of the... Now, who are these Misnagdim? You have to know they're big players. One of them is number three, the Merkevas HaMishnah. The Merkevas HaMishnah, his name was Reb Shloime of Chelm. Reb Shloime of Chelm was about 30 years older than the Alter Rebbe. So you're talking about early days of Chassidus. He ultimately was a rabbi in Chelm, in a couple cities, a rabbi in Lvov.
He was older and lived at the same time, or he was older? and
He
died
was
before?
older. He died much before the Alter Rebbe, but the overlap.
But he's
was a
saying
little-
did he overlap? Yeah.
No,
the overlap. Yeah. He was 30 years older, and he passed away in 17. He was born in 1717, passed away 1781. Alter Rebbe is born 1745. So that's the timeline.
Spent 40 years together.
But they weren't in the same place. He ended up, he was in Greece for a little bit in Salonika, where he died actually. And he also spent a bit of time in Eretz Yisrael. Now, how do we know he was a big misnag? Now, he wrote an incredible pirush on the Rambam. We have a story that the Alter Rebbe did not want to look into his Sfarim. And the Alter Rebbe, though, wanted to see a pshat that he says. So the Alter Rebbe asked one of his chassidim, can you please look in the Sefer and tell me what it says? So the chassid looked in the Sefer, he learned the shtickle, and he told the Alter Rebbe. And the Alter Rebbe said, Shchinta begalusa. God is in exile. He loved the pshat, and Nebuch had to be in the Misnagdish Sefer.
Man.
What's the record that he was a Misnagid? Our historians have a hard time figuring out. We don't have any record. Except, apparently he was in Eretz Yisrael in the late 1770s when Mendel Horodoker, in 1777, Mendel Horodoker, Avram Kalisker, and some other Chassidish Rebbes went to Eretz Yisrael. Alter Rebbe wanted to join them initially, it's a whole story. They came to Eretz Yisrael and they countered some opposition to them. Who was there? So, apparently this Reb Shloim of Chelm was there, and he was the one who gave them a hard time. Now, how do we know this? Because Mendel Horodoka has a letter which he wrote in 1780 where he says that Baruch Hashem, the rabbi from Lvov, is gone. You don't have to worry about the guy anymore.
Hey.
He was a rabbi in Lvov before he came there, and he left there just at that point to go to Greece to print some of his farm. That's where he died. So it
Seems like it was him.
there's many. It's still a debate if it was him, but we have the Alter Rebbe story. We have this letter.
You can also say there were a lot of people there from Lvov. I mean,
No, but he was the rabbi there, and we know, and he was. Also later on, one of the Vilna Gaon student, Yisrael of Shklov, writes that everyone knows the hard time the Mekevus HaMishnah gave to the Chassidim when they came to Eretz Yisrael. So he wasn't a Misnagid in Russia. He was a Misnagid Dafka when he came to Eretz Yisrael in the late 1770s. Although he was around in the times of the Baal Shem Tov, but then he was quiet. Anyhow, but what he says over here is an incredible thing. Look at number 3. It's very simple. Look at the second line. Number 3, second line. V'li Niri says, you know what it seems to me? Rabbeinu Ochaz Loshen Ashas. The Rambam is quoting the Gemara. Kol Nachash, any nichush, which is, you don't rely on it like Eliezer. Meaning what the Gemara meant was that Shetolu B'tchoyna Malasimen. You have to, that in order for it to be nichush, you got to rely on it like Eliezer did. And if you don't eino nichush, it doesn't count. Meaning the ein isur ele im kain hamenachash maimin v'soymech daito al siman. The isur of nichush is only if the diviner believes, trusts, and relies on his siman like Eliezer. But he says Eliezer had a loophole. Amnam hatzadikim halalu lo ysamchu atzmam al siman. Eliezer didn't rely on the omen. Eliezer prayed to God. Elosamchu atzmam al tzikasam. Eliezer and Yonasan relied on their righteousness. Sheritzoyin Yerev Yasa, God would fulfill their desire. V'hasiman hu la'ois shakel yemalim mishaloisam. Eliezer said, God, I'm asking you, please make this the sign so I will know who should marry Yitzchak. V'hu ke'ein hashayla b'urim v'tumim. You'd go to the Urim v'tumim and ask, should I go to war? It's nichush, based on how the letters will light up and what the words will be. That's what you can decide what you're going to do. Yes, because that's called asking God. And Eliezer, Hispal Hashem, he davened to the Eibush, and so to Yonasan, who mentioned God's name. And the second last line, Mistame Hispalo Tchila, Yonasan probably davened. Hare, you see from Mishabotchu Alidei Ha'ois, they trusted in the sign that through that the Eibush will listen to their voice, and the Eibush will show them the sign, and through this Sorat Tlunas Arriva, the Riva's question falls off. Meaning, what he's saying is like this. In order for something to be nichush, you have to make an omen and follow through on the omen. So the Gemara's point is Rav never followed through. He was going to his son-in-law anyways. You have to follow through like Eliezer and Yonasan. But they had a different loophole. What was their loophole?
faith and
they weren't doing nichush because they davened to Hashem. As long as you stick the Eibishter into it, it's not nichush. They were in the ballpark of nichush because they were following the path. They made an omen, they followed through. but they were taking a parallel path, but a different street, because they're going under the hand of God. So the point of the Gemara was, nichush has to be similar to Eliezer and Yonasan, that you make a sign and you follow through.
But it has to be without God.
Exactly. And the point of the Gemara is, Rab B'chal didn't follow through.
The conversation never being past or future, that's only without God.
That the past or future was the Radak. That was the Radak. That was the Radak.
Example.
That was the
Not the
Radak.
way they did it.
Now look at number 4.
Just without the...
Number 4 is the Torah Tmima. The Torah Tmima was
By the way,
a lit fisher.
Not to be Atsandim.
Good question. So look. So let's see. The Torah Tmima, number 4. The Torah Tmima, Reb Epstein. He was a son of the Aruch HaShulchan, the backwards Shulchan Aruch. Now, I shouldn't say that. The Aruch HaShulchan was a great Gaon, and in fact he met up with the Tzemach Tzedek and spoke to him in learning. When he left, he said he was amazed by the Tzemach Tzedek's scholarship, but there's one thing he couldn't handle. The Aruch HaShulchan, the Torah Tmima's father, said. He said by the Tzemach Tzedek, the Alter Rebbe was like the be-all and end-all. He couldn't relate to that. To him, the Alter Rebbe was just another opinion, but that the Alter Rebbe was like the be-all and end-all. He couldn't, like shook his Litvischer bones. But the Aruch HaShulchan was these were huge scholars, and he had a son, the Torah Tmima. There's a nice picture of him with a very, nice common spirit, they call it.
Is anyone
And he-
to the Chumash Torah too?
Yeah, he wrote it. That's him.
him.
And the Rebbe used his Chumash, yeah. Now, under the Chumash, he has his commentary. What it is he quotes statements of Chazal related to the Pasuk, right, yeah. And then underneath that, he has his explanations.
But his sources are very...
Right, yeah, it's great, correct. Great sources.
When?
He passed, his father passed away in like 1908. He passed away maybe 30, 40 years later. He passed away less than 100 years ago.
Oh wow!
So it was, it was a little
They're
more.
indexed by the Pesukim instead of being indexed by the Daf.
Now he has been accused of plagiarizing. In his commentary, he quotes from.
Overlap the Rebbe's.
Yeah.
What does he quote?
No, he's been accused of plagiarizing, of not quoting, of writing his own stuff and really taking it from elsewhere.
Is there any
But-
correspondence
so-
between the Rebbe and him?
No.
No.
There's
He
some
is
good stories.
really
I'll tell quickly. I'll throw in this
really
one
good
story because we always have to throw in stories. A quick story, and then we go weiter. That when he was a young fellow, just to show his sharpness, he walked into a room where his father was there and some of the big Gaonim, the Litvische Gaonim were there, and they were all discussing the following Shaila. There were two butchers that were business partners. They got in, they had a fallout. And one of them told the other, I swear never to see you again. And they separated. Now the other guy died. So the one that made the oath was still alive. He wanted to go to the Levaya, He's like, yeah, enough already, On the other hand, he swore never to see his friend again. So the shaila is the shvuah still in place? So all these Gaonim were discussing back and forth. So he was a bocher maybe at the time. The Torah Tmim, and he said, there's a pasuk in Chumash. Everyone is like, shah, still. Pasuk in Chumash, what are you talking about? He said this in Parshas B'Shalach. Moshe told the Yidden who were being pursued by the Egyptians, you will never see the Egyptians again. Now what happens later in the Parsha? They see them all dead, spoon across the Yam Suf. Is a raya that when you say you can't see someone ever again, it doesn't include after death. And that settled the score. Anyhow, but he says the same thing as Mekeves HaMishnah. As long as you bring the Eibishter into it, it's not a problem. Look at number 4. What seems to me clear is it's only a problem. It's all about the chance. Without mentioning God. Without asking for God's help. That God should cause the circumstance to happen. Then there's Kishuv. And he quotes a Gemara in Chulin. The Gemara in Chulin says the word Kishuv is similar to the word Makchish. It's actually a combination. Makchish Pamal Yeshamayla. It contradicts the heavenly abode, the heavenly court. That's the problem with black magic. So therefore, if you use the Eibishter's name, so someone as long as you incorporate God into the black magic, it's no longer a problem.
Please age to give me a sign.
For
God puts a black cat in front of me.
Right, exactly. Yeah, there's a twist to it.
Yeah.
Which would mean that definitely if you open up the Igris and you say, Eibush to give me a sign, according to them, no problem. The Mekeves HaMishnah, it's the Udim V'Tumim. It's like the Udim V'Tumim. You're asking God. So according to them, it makes a lot of sense that the Rambam, according to them, there's actually no debate between the Rambam and the Raavad. The Rambam and Raavad both agree Eliezer's off the hook because he mentioned God's name. When the Rambam and the Gemara said don't act like Eliezer means don't do similar to him, which means to make an omen and act upon it. But without God's name.
Without the elements.
The point was that Rav by the ferry didn't mention God's name, but he didn't act upon it. So the point of the Gemara, he did nothing wrong, he didn't act upon it. You have to act like Eliezer. But Eliezer had another loophole, which is he brought the Eibush into it.
It's also planning. The whole thing of the left.
Don't do like Eliezer, meaning to make an omen and act upon it. Eliezer himself had a separate loophole, which is he mentioned God's name.
Rav didn't say before he came to the river, Hashem, give me a sign. He came there, the sign happened.
Right.
It's like
that's why it could have been a problem.
Right, that's why it could have been a
Rav's
problem.
loophole was he didn't act upon it.
Right.
Exactly. In other words, had Rav acted upon it.
That was his answer.
Exactly.
That was his good, but had he said, Hashem, give me a sign when I get to the shore,
Which
that
is
it's
the
going to be
Shaila,
good, then it would have been okay.
Which is the Shaila that the
Then
Gemara
he could have
finished off.
acted.
Rav used to do that, so we still have to get to that.
Yeah, so it could have been
Okay.
okay.
Does the Rambam say that it's also?
If you act like Eliezer as far as making an omen and acting upon it.
Out Hashem's name.
Without the Eibush,
Not if you do
brackets
what
without
Eliezer
God.
did.
Exactly.
You acted like that.
Exactly.
It's a little tough.
Okay, but
Bad example.
look back at number 3.
It's
It's
hold
the
on.
only example.
The last word.
I mean, is there any other
either
example
way,
you
okay.
can give other than Eliezer?
That's what you find in Tanakh. Okay, weiter. So that's path number 2. The path of the Masnagdim, which is if you bring the Eibush in the mix, it's all
Nice.
good.
It is a nice chapter.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It answers everything. It really answers everything.
Yeah, it really does.
The only what? But it's not unanimous. And okay, so we go to number 3.
Definitely doesn't agree with that because Rav has a question on the Rambam.
Correct. Well, yeah. The Raiva definitely felt that the Rambam was saying Eliezer did an Isser. Okay.
You should be hit with lightning.
The approach number 3 is the Ran. Look on the next page. The next page, approach number 3 is the Ran number 7. I won't read the whole thing, even though it's actually a very easy read, but it's long. But the point of the Ran is very simple. In fact, somebody said it earlier, but I didn't want to give you credit then, because then I would... What you said before, Mendel, was mamish the word of the Ran. The Ran says like this. You know when nichush is osir? If the sign and your decision don't have any correlation between the two. Because a fox passed by, I ain't going to go there. You know? But Eliezer was sent... Avram is Mr. Hachnosis Orchem. Eliezer knows who's going to be fitting for Yitzchak, who can come join Avram's family, someone who would do this test of feeding me and the camels.
Strategic son.
He says Yonason, in fact, look what he says about Yonason. Look at number 7 on the right column.
Eliezer wasn't strategic.
Yeah, he
Eliezer wasn't
Very
strategic.
much.
He
This
needs
was the
somebody-
sign.
Yonason was strategic, meaning there was a logical, has nothing to do with Hashem. Eliezer is asking for a pure miracle.
No,
It's illogical.
How will he know if the girl's
Sensitive
fitting?
enough
How will he know if the girl's fitting to marry Yitzchak?
Because it's not logical. Why would a girl, like what's the name, said it today in Tanya? You're sitting there with 10 men with a whole army behind you, all your things. You ask a 3-year-old girl to help and feed all your people. It's illogical.
No. Whichever girl it was going to be, though,
You didn't say a 3-year-old
this
girl.
will be
You
the
said
determining
8-year-old.
factor if she's fitting. Right. The sign
How's
itself.
she going to
But
fit
why?
into the family?
Why is that logical? That's illogical.
Because the only person that's fitting to marry.
Why would a girl do that? Why would any girl do that? You can make forget the 3-year-old, a 23-year-old, a 23-year-old.
You're right. Why they would
Why
do
a girl
that?
would do it is a different question.
Right,
Yeah, because that's not
But
logical.
once she does it, exactly.
But that's not a logical thing. Yonason had a practical
Okay, they're both
application.
good.
This is asking for a miracle. It's pure divination. It's Hashem. If they come over and she scratches her ear with her hand around her head, it's not logical.
No relation.
It's not.
Related.
It's a related to Achlas Shorten, but it's not logical.
You're making me-
Yonison's was totally logical. If a guy's going to say, "Oh, wait a second," then you got to be hesitant. If a guy's going to say, "Yeah, come join us," then their guard is down. You got to go kill him. It makes total sense without Hashem.
Your Honor.
It doesn't have to be that it had to do with it. but
Eliezer's
there's a
still
correlation.
alive. We can ask him to come tell us.
We can, but there's nothing logical about. It's connected. It's not logical.
No.
It's illogical but connected.
let me say
Yeah,
this.
if the girl jumps over the moon and gives me $5 and says, "Come into my house," that's beautiful. It's not logical. Yonason was logical.
No. Let's say it like this: Eliezer's omen and his decision after that omen are linked.
Definitely.
That's it.
That's it.
That's
They're
it.
linked. It's not logical. That's my point.
omen isn't.
Yonason is logical.
It's even better. Let's see. Let's look at number 7.
Linked for sure.
Look at number 7. She starts off in number 7, the right hand side. The Ran says the words of the Ravid are Tmu'in Beinai. The Ravid is attacking the Rambam. The Rambam just quoting a Gemara, Shari Mefurish B'Gemara, Shalei Inyan Isser Nema, right? We brought a Radak to give a funny pshat in the Gemara, but the simple reading is that Eliezer did real nichush. So go down a couple lines. About 7 lines down, it starts V'kach nirali b'tirutzon shel dvarim. He said pshat's like this: the nichush she'asra Torah is when someone hangs his words b'simin in a sign she'ein hasvora noisenes, that logic doesn't dictate she'hei b'hem goyim toyelis l'dorva, that the sign would actually help you in any way or the other, or good or bad. For example, your bread fell out of your hand, right, or a deer passed in front of you. She'eilu v'kirtze behem is darchem, or it's following the goyim. Avol halekech simonim bedover shasvora noidas. If logic says that this simon does indicate a toyelis or damage, ein zeh nachash. Shekol iskel, this is how the world wants. If somebody says, if it's raining, I'm not walking outside. Oh, divination. That's not divination. That's logic.
It's logic,
right? That's minhagei shalaylam. And Eliezer, Eved Avram, and Yonason, they did they did their action based on logical signs. He says Eliezer. The first word of the line is Eliezer. We're in number 7, the right column. By now, we're about 20 lines down. Start with Eliezer Yedei Hoya. Eliezer knew that you can't make a match for Yitzchak Avinu unless she's fitting. Therefore, he made a sign. If she's going to be so beautiful in her actions and complete in her midas, to the point that when he tells her, "Give me some water," she says, "Not just you, but your camels as well." That means that she's the woman for Yitzchak. And then he said, "V'chein Yonason ben Shaul." Shebikush, let's read Yonason inside. He wanted to hit the camp of the Plishtim. He, V'noise Caleb, but it was just him and his helper. He took the simon to himself. He said, if the Plishtim will say, "Hey, come up to us," it means that they're scared of us lying in ambush. Then Yonason trusted on his own gevura that he and his helper will knock him down. He says, because that's normal that sometimes 2 or 3 courageous warriors can cause many of the enemy to flee. But if the guards of the Plishtim will say, "Wait there till we come to you," that means that the Goyim aren't afraid of us, of our ambush, and therefore, it's not a good idea for us to attack them. And then, what does he say in the left-hand column? He says basically the same thing as we saw in the previous Mahalach. Eliezer and Yonason, they followed the path of Nichush. They made a sign and acted on it. What was their loophole? That it was logical.
That's the loophole. I thought the loopholes they said they thanked God.
That was the other pshat. This is we're in the third opinion. Right, we said we're going through 4 approaches.
Right.
The third approach is similar to the second in that Eliezer and Yonason had a little loophole. Their nichush happened to be logical. So it was okay, but they were following the path of making a sign and acting upon it. The Gemara's point was that Rav, by the story of his son-in-law, Bechlal never acted on his omens. He never even entered the arena of nichush. Right. Eliezer and Yonason did. They had a loophole that their nichush was logical. That is the approach of the Ran. I will tell you that the Ran, though, at the end says, what about the stories of Rav? Doesn't the Gemara finish off saying Rav used to always check the ferry?
Right.
So he deals with that. Also, look at number 7 on the left.
It's logical.
Look,
Perry's here quick. I have no waiting
No.
time.
No. That's not what he says. He says, look what he says. Look on the left-hand side of number 7, halfway down. In the left-hand column of number 7, halfway down. V'ikash yilach. Actually, sorry. A couple, 4 lines above that. V'rav loy tola ma'isov b'mabra. Rav never really penned on the ferry. Shahari loyama. Rav never said.
No, I'm sorry. No, he's still talking about the story of the son-in-law. Forget that. Go 4 lines down. V'ikash yilach harab yochanan bodik biyanuka.
He says Rabbi Yochanan would ask the kid, tell me your pasuk, and based on that he would act. Venira, it seems, Shuhu Toila Maisav, it seems like Rabbi Yochanan would mamish act based on the pasuk. Right? The Haboy Lamezul, he wanted to go visit Shmuel, but when the kid said Shmuel died, he didn't go. So what does the Ran say? He says, asking a kid is not like nichush, it's like a small prophecy. The Gemara says in Baba Basra that after the Churban, prophecy was given to crazy people and to kids. So the Ran says that you're allowed to ask a kid a pasuk and decide what you will do based on that, because it's a prophecy, it's like God. It's really like what the Merkeves HaMishnah said about davening to Hashem. It's bringing the Eibush into it. But now he gets Ulafi Zeh. The Gemara says that Rav would always badik b'mavra. This was the big question at the end of the Gemara number 1. The Gemara said Rav generally relied on the ferry. So look what he says. Rav would decide if it was ready, he would go. If it was hard to find the ferry, he wouldn't. Says the Ran, the Efsher, 5 lines from the bottom, Sha'af zeh eino smach gomer. Rav would not completely rely like Eliezer and Yonason. Rav really didn't know if he wanted to go anyways on whatever trip he was going to go. El Shaya'isa Simon Shalmavra Sniflem, he would throw it in the pile. Rav would come to the dock. I don't know, he had a place to go. He had 5 reasons not to go.
Why didn't he just do simple?
Yeah.
If the logic is there, if it's far away, I don't have the time.
Yeah.
No,
Or
because
it's a good omen if I don't have to wait like an idiot for 15 minutes.
Well, let's say he had the time either way.
The time is, even if he had
Rob
the time,
was-
waiting is something. It's
like
still a
waiting.
waste.
Like wait.
Doesn't like
What?
I
waiting.
go to a store and there's a long line. I don't go. And nothing to do with
Getting on a ferry, it's there quick. I'm like, oh, great.
So then,
I hit the front of the line.
Then the
Hell
Gemara
not to
wouldn't
say
quote it. The Gemara wouldn't quote it. The Gemara is quoting that Rav was boidik b'mabra. He would do some divining. So the Ran says he really had 10 reasons to go, 10 reasons not to go.
Where does he get that from? He changes the whole game. It's just
Because
changing the
according
whole
to him, there's
Gemara
no other way. Or
to
else,
make it fit his thing.
because or else you're saying Rav didn't Avera. Now, hold on. What about Rabbi Yochanan with the kids? So that he says it's like a
answer.
But what about Shmuel opening the book? The Gemara quoted 3 stories. Rav with the ferry, Rabbi Yochanan with the kids, Shmuel with the book. So the Ran doesn't say. Would he say that opening a safe is also like a small prophecy?
Or like a sham? Maybe
The
a
Gemara
sham.
Babas doesn't say that. Doesn't say that. Or asking God.
That's Torah.
Urim v'tumim. Or maybe he would say the same thing, that Shmuel had 10 reasons to do A, 10 reasons not to. He would open a book, and based on what it says, he just threw that in the pile, like the Ran says about Rav by the ferry.
That seems to be the most divination of all. If
Okay,
you really have,
right.
if you're really thinking of whether or not to do it, and that's the only factor that
no, it's not the
changes.
only
It's a
factor.
coin flip.
You want it?
It's a coin flip. I
Yeah, but
could do
you're-
this, I could do that.
You're
If
like
the
this,
car
and
am
the
deciding to do it.
but it's the deciding
You're
factor.
looking help to make the decision. You just want to someone make the decision for me. You know.
That's what divination is.
No, but you're not linking any connection between this
You're
and
going
that.
and
It's just,
acting
you know
on
what?
it.
You know what? I didn't want to go anyways. That's basically the idea.
That's a nice way to say it afterwards. If it would have gone the other way, you said, "Oh, great, I'm going. I really always wanted to go."
Or you
Right.
want to do both.
Okay.
That's it. And it's just
You can't do both.
a
That's
coin
the
flip.
point of
It's a coin
divination.
flip.
Anyhow.
That's always what
Okay.
divination is. What are you asking to divine if you don't know? If you know, you go.
Before
If you
we
don't feel good about it,
before
you feel
we
like
see the
you're hesitant,
Rogachover,
you
which is
divinate.
the 4th explanation.
I've never been there. He went to go find out. He divinated he went to the witch because he needed to know.
Show
went
that's
to after his mother.
much worse than divination.
Okay,
I
but
believe.
why did he go? Because he wasn't sure. Should I go fight
Shaul's
with
life
them?
was in the balance.
Yeah.
There is a shaila. Are you allowed to do witchcraft to save your life? Is witchcraft an offshoot of pagan?
He wasn't looking to
idolatry?
save his life though, because in the end he knew
died
he was
the
going to
next
die.
day.
He knew he was going to die, and he went anyways. Shmuel told him, "You're going to die," but you go. He didn't run
He
away.
didn't have. Well, when Shmuel told him he was going to die, he knew you can't run away from your destiny.
You try. It wasn't his
And yeah, let's leave.
It wasn't Shmuel.
Did we ever discuss that? Reb Shmuel Bar Chafni Gaon says that whole story
It wasn't
was a
Shmuel, it was
farce.
behind the curtain.
There was a man hiding behind the curtain.
Oh yeah, we looked
said
at
it.
And we had the whole exactly. Yeah,
That's Yankees.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well,
I'm happy I wasn't here for that.
there's a long radak there. Reb Sadia Gaon says no. That the
inside.
He was the one that said there was no malachim about the thing.
The Rambam, the whole thing with
Yeah, the Rambam. We had some
By the way-
serious.
Oh, this was the murder in the book.
that was
That was the murder in the book.
I think it's the Rambam that never.
And there were big ones. Our Barnabels. We had some big people who were on that side.
There's a reason why
Malach never
never
had
allow people to.
To-
The whole point of
It was a vision. It was a vision. It was a vision.
Oh, that one. Okay, I got confused.
By the way, the Rambam.
Had he tried telling her either the Rambam or the Rambam, like big.
No, the Ramban says.
I
The Ramban said it's
They
awesome
hold
to
it.
hear such a thing. How much more so to
him
believe
having a
it?
vision.
Ramban said it's awesome to hear the.
Where do I
Yeah.
find
He
it?
was hallucinating.
Yeah,
It was a prophecy. It was a
Because of the
prophecy.
medication.
Because the medication.
She takes medication. Well, combined.
Not on that, not that we know of.
Yeah, that was a whole.
But
But
the snake also never happened. Right?
We saw
Yeah, there
four
was-
opinions by the snake. Yeah, all right, let's leave that. Yoin and the whale, some say that.
yes, Joanne
It's
and the
also
whale.
just a
Oh,
muscle.
Joanne and the whale wasn't there.
Some say
There's
it's
so
a
many
muscle.
more things.
Oh,
Yeah,
just-
Shemesh,
yeah,
that's
all right.
The whole Torah.
Yeah, they were basically taking everything down. The rationalists were taking everything down.
But we saw what the Mekubalim said.
Yeah.
right?
The
The
end.
Ralbag wrote a sefer called Mulchamas Hashem, the War of God, and one of the big Rishonim, Reb Shem Tov, Ibn Shem Tov, was a big Kabbalist. He calls the Ralbag sefer not Mulchamas Hashem, the War
Yeah,
of God.
Milcham
It's
Hashem.
the war on God.
Yeah,
Mulchamas
yeah,
al Hashem,
yeah,
the war against
yeah,
God.
Yeah.
The Kabbalists were not happy with these people.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that Tzemach Tzedek was with his kids. He said the Rambam had a healthy stomach, and the Alter Rebbe as well. Like scorpions and snakes. None of you should learn Mer Nevuchim. You don't have the stomach for it. And he pointed
Yeah,
at one
yeah,
of
yeah,
you,
to you.
for sure. And we don't know. They didn't reveal who the you was.
You
Anyhow,
definitely stay away.
Exactly. Now, before we go to the Rogachover's approach, which is absolutely fascinating, just to discuss for a moment what about Shmuel opening up that sefer, because the Ran discusses Rabbi Yochanan with the kid. He says that's a minor prophecy. Rab with the fairy was just to tilt the scale. He leaves out Shmuel with the book. What's the deal with opening up a sefer and making a decision? So there's something called the Gorel of the Vilna Gaon. It's attributed to the Vilna Gaon. What it is very few people even know. You have to open up a Tanakh, a certain page, and you go 7 pages this direction, a little bit the other direction. You have to look for different signs of psukim and of letters. It looks like a whole voodoo thing, and then you'll find an incredible answer to your question. Reb Chaim Kanievsky, we've got to mention him.
Oh, you got him.
He has a story. Hold on, he has a
hasn't
story.
been here for a while.
So for his father, the Steipler Gaon, was very much against using it. His son, Reb Chaim, gave 2 reasons. A, no one knows exactly how to do it authentically.
This whole thing.
Right, because there's too many secrets. And number 2, B'chlal, the Torah says, Tomim tiyem Hashem lekecha, believe in the Eibishter. Why are you making these types of... But he did it himself once. There was a story. 4 brothers came to Chaim Kanievsky. They said, we have a sister who never her kidneys are out. All of us are prospective donors. But who's going to have the schus to give a kidney to the sister?
They were doing back kidney.
Wasn't it? Chaim just passed away. He just passed away. He just passed away.
Right, but when is the story back? How far back were they?
I don't know. Maybe a couple of decades ago, they were doing it. Whenever it happened, they were doing it. Okay. So he said, we got to make the Gorel of the Vilna Gaon. So he knew how to do it. He did it. It fell out.
The Gaon or the Rogachover?
No. We'll get to the Rogachover in a minute. The Vilna Gaon.
They're going
The
back.
Vilna Gaon's Gorel.
Not written anywhere.
No, it's like those that talk about it don't know how it works. Those that know how it works don't talk about it. It fell on one of the brothers, so he gave him a bracha. The guy, a month later, 3 of the brothers are back at Reb Chaim's office. They knock on the door. They come in. Chaim said, "What happened? Where's the 4th guy?" So they said, the 4th brother, the one that you chose, he went to the operating table, and. No, hold on. There's a happy ending. Hold on.
I feel like laughing.
And they found in his heart a major issue with the heart, and it was unnoticed. And because they found at that moment he couldn't give the kidney,
but they saved his life.
They saved his life.
That's incredible.
So they came back and they said, so now that there's the 3 of us, who's gonna?
All right.
So he made another Gorel and he chose one of them. And he gave the kidney, and they all survived. All 5, the 4 brothers and the girl survived. So all the Muslim were very excited about this. You see, because they made the girl of the girl, the guy's life was saved. It's an incredible story. In 1948, during the War of Independence, there was a story that there was a van or bus. 38 soldiers traveled to bring provisions.
Got blew up.
As they were traveling, one guy broke an ankle, so him and 2 people helped them go back. 35 people left.
Yeah.
They were all unfortunately blown up by the Arabs.
Yeah.
The Arabs took the bodies, mutilated them. When the Yidden got them back, 23 out of the 35 they could recognize, not the other 12. So the people were buried, but families didn't know who's who. So they went to the chief rabbi of Jerusalem, Reb Tzvi Pesach Frank. Reb Tzvi Pesach Frank was a big Talmid Chacham, a big rabbi. He wrote beautiful svarim. By the way, he was a big fan of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, and he has lots of actually chidushim, beautiful explanations in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. And he was a big rabbi, so they came to him. So rabbis get all types of identify the people are buried. How's he going to identify them? He said the only way is to make the Gorel of the Vilna Gaon. Wow. He said, I can't do it. You have to go to someone who was named the Tzaddik of Jerusalem, Rabbi Aryeh Levin. Levin, he's a Levi, Mishpacha. Exactly. So, Rabbi Aryeh Levin was known as the Tzaddik of Yerushalayim. He had a little base medrash. So it was late at night, only a few people were there. It was pitch black. They had 12 candles, 1 candle for each of the people. And he had 12 names in front of him. And there was a map with the 12 locations of where the people were buried. And he was supposed to match them up.
Who's who?
So he took out the Tanakh and he does the whole ritual from, again, attributed to the Vilna Gaon. And so he took one of the locations. He was holding, I guess maybe they cut the map into 12 parts. He was holding one of the locations. He opens the Tanakh and he reaches the first, when he did the ritual, he reaches the word Binyamin. And one of the 12 names was Binyamin. Binyamin's buried here. He takes the next one. Each of the 12 times he did the ritual, he hit on one of the names. It was incredible, without missing. There were 12 names. There was a show. All the names, were either clear or very strongly hinted to into the Tanakh. And each time he did the ritual, he found another one. There was a oided, there was a show. Each one he mamish found. And his families were there and made a huge shturim that the people that were there, they witnessed, that each time it hit one of the 12 names. Wow. And identified all the graves based on that.
Thank God nobody was named Christopher.
They would have found something there too. Anyhow, so it happens to be that many say this doesn't come from the Vilna Gaon. It comes from a different Rebbe Eliyahu. Who? Rebbe Eliyahu HaKoyen from Izmir. There was an incredible rabbi in Turkey, a little bit older than the Baal Shem Tov. He lived in Turkey, Rebbe Eliyahu HaKoyen of Izmir. He wrote fascinating svarim. Actually, I like to quote him a lot because he has outlandish stuff. He was a great darshan. Friar people would come to hear his drushes. Actually, the Chidah says that there was once a fellow who came to his drusha. This guy was mamish up to no good. But after the drusha, he went over to the Rav and he said, you know what, I won't even tell you what I was planning to do. But after this drusha, I can't do that anymore. Right. And he made incredible impressions on people. And apparently he was big into this Gorel. So some say that when we say this was the Gorel of Rebbe Eliyahu, it's not the Vilna Gaon, it's Eliyahu HaKoyen of Izmir. Now how do I know to say this? Look at number 8. This is from the Chidah. Kosav Marikash Le'el. Who's the Maharikash? This is the Chidah in one of his Sfarim on Halacha. The Maharikash was Rabbi Yaakov Castro. Rabbi Yaakov Castro lived in the 1500s in Egypt. And he was a huge Sephardish posek, to the point he took upon his shoulders to argue on Rabbi Yosef Kaira, who they were contemporaries. In fact, he actually once went to Tzfas. He spent a Shabbos by Rabbi Yosef Kaira, and he writes how the whole Shabbos he was looking at what Rabbi Kaira was doing to catch him on things. Yeah. Either way, the Chidah says the guy was so big that in Egypt, which was a Sephardish populace, they accepted on themselves that whenever Rabbi Yaakov Castro argues on the Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Yosef Kaira, we're going to take Rabbi Yaakov Castro. That's how great the man was. Now, Rabbi Yaakov Castro says, nearly it seems to me, everyone agrees you can open up a chumash, to see what pasuk comes up. That's not nichush, the Torah is our life, like we find by the king Yoshiyahu. Very quickly, that Rabbi Yoshiyahu, the king, one of the last kings in the first Beis Hamikdash, wanted to renovate the Beis Hamikdash. The Kohen Gadol at the time, his name was Chilkiyahu. He's renovating, he comes across a Sefer Torah. He opens it up, he sees Parshas Kisavai, God will take you and your king into exile. So Chilkiyahu comes to the king Yoshiyahu and says, you know what I saw? And they took that as a horrible omen, and they sent it to the prophetess Huldah to interpret. Says Yoshiyahu, says the Marikash, you see? If you open up a chumash, you can take that as a sign from heaven. V'chein amad dabar, that's what people do. Continues the Chidah.
What was the end of that story?
It was true. Huldah lied to them. She was the one.
No. Huldah said that there will be destructions.
No, but she stopped. She told them there's a way around it.
Well, she said because the king Yeshua is a good man, he won't see the destruction in his life. Taka, he died a young man, he was in his 30s. But Vihine, says the Chidah, it says in Yalkut in Mishlei, if you want to take Eitzah from the Torah, take. If you want to ask advice from the Chumash, take. What does that mean, says the Chidah? It means open it up and start reading. If you have a question. V'chein David says, B'pikudecha asicha, I'll speak in your psukim. Mashma says the Chidah that to take an Eitzah from the Torah, now it could just mean you hear a drasha, take a lesson. Says the Chidah, no, it literally means to ask a question, open up the Bible, and there's your answer. After it's Bechlal, opening up the Torah to see a pasuk, whatever comes your way. And then he says, I found a manuscript from Eliyahu HaKohen of Izmir, the author of the Shevet Musar, the guy that we mentioned, Shekasa. Rabbi Eliyahu HaKohen of Izmir says, I have a tradition from my masters. When they wanted to do something and they were unsure to do it or not, they would take a Chumash, or the Arba, the Esrim, that's a Tanakh, the 24 Sfarim, and they would open it up and they would look at the top of the page, whatever it said, that's what they would do. And it was if they were asking the Torah, what should they do? And that's what the Medrash means, to take Eitzah from the Chumash. And the Ein Ze Bichlal Mishtamish B'Torah. And the Chidah is again quoting a manuscript from Eliyahu HaKohen of Izmir. It's not called using Torah for your own means. It's called Pashat asking Torah what you should do. Okay.
Where do we see these right today?
So concerning that, let's just, hold on. I want to go back to the first page, number 6. Go back to the first page, number 6. Now we're going to wrap up. I'll tell you the Rogachover quickly in a moment. But number 6 on the first page. This is the Rebbe. Ukiyadua, it's known. Minig Yisrael. This is a Sichin Tovshin Mem Tes. Bamidbar. Says the Rebbe.
What does this mean?
Mikadmas to know means from way. Lukutei Sichos. Says the Rebbe, it's known the custom from way back when, if people wanted to work out how they should act, binyani rishus means not a halachic shayla, but they would make a Gorel, like to open a holy book, a chumash, and wherever the book opened up to is bashkacha pratis, they would find a sign. And based on that, says the Rebbe, they would decide what they would act upon it. Not just to say, that's a good sign, I was going to do that anyway, it's a good sign. No! To act based on what you find. And they would explain that since the Sefer opened up to this pasuk, it's a simon from heaven that God wants me to do this. But look on the left-hand side is the Rebbe's footnote. Ulahar says the Rebbe...
Is this from the same Sikha?
Yeah, same Sikha. Mitzad Goydel has it, the Rebbe wrote this, that because of how careful you have to be from misusing holy books, perhaps it's kedai lihimona not to use holy books. Upshita, for sure, if the question you have is stam a mundane question, which restaurant you should go to that night, right? The Yasu make a Gorel with other ways, not holy books.
But
and to point out, the Rebbe says, Bechlal Gorel is from heaven, so you don't have to use a holy book, anything you use. So the one the Rebbe says, don't use Sfarim.
This Gorel is...
So... It happens to be, though, Before I get into the Rogachover, I will tell you what. Right. So
Unless it's in Yonei.
right. That's the, he's saying what to do an upgrade. He's saying medicine or shidduchim. You're the chilman is not concerned. Yeah, but who's going to do it?
Should I make an operation? Should I not?
But if it's in Yonei Chol, why is someone opening a chumash to see which restaurant they should go to? L'chor in Yonei Chol is something which is important, but not holy.
Business.
A business question. A business question. It's
So
important.
Yonei Chol,
It's important,
yeah.
but
It's
it's not a
important.
mitzvah.
So what's Yonei non-chol?
Well, if somebody has a question, should I go ahead,
I
sir?
don't know. Should a kid go to this yeshiva or that?
Yeah.
That's not chol.
That's not good.
Hey, I don't know. What should I do with my
Kedusha.
life? I don't
Should I
know.
get
Should I don't know.
You know.
Which I don't know.
In Yoni
Which
I think
vices should I
engaged is
support?
it would not be in Yonei
That's
Chol.
chol?
No, that would be a mitzvah thing. Now
I
you
think
have a
engaged
choice.
would be mitzvah because it's a mitzvah to be pru or
Sounds like in
vu.
Yoni Kodesh is something which the Torah directs you a certain way. He said something which
No,
isn't
no,
clearly
no.
defined by
I
Torah.
No.
That's not counted.
In Yonei
Chol
Chol
would be
is
like
right. If it's not
That's
directly a
not
mitzvah,
connected with
That's
Torah.
reshus. It's not chol. Reshus.
I don't know. Let's say you're not sure someone's asking you for help and you're not sure really if helping them is good for them or bad for them. I don't know. So it's obviously sure that would be a mitzvah, right? Anyhow, it happens to be during the times of the Tzemach Tzedek there was a great Rav, Reb Shlomo Kluger, Reb Shlomo the sharp one, who, by the way, the Tzemach Tzedek would send him questions. He was a rabbi in Brod, now it's in the western
What year is
Ukraine.
it from? What
Memtes. So this is one of this is the it's the latest.
Yeah. 89.
Menno showed me this years ago.
Yeah.
89.
So Reb Shlomo Kluger says like this.
Yeah, what?
That you can do it.
For
So I told him,
Yonei.
where do you get the source?
But his Rebbe is not.
Well, Mendel is his
no.
uncle,
Yeah.
and he showed you this.
Some say when
Wow.
the Rebbe says don't use holy books, he means Tanakh. But Igris,
Igris, that would be.
Igris isn't holy. If someone's writing to Igris, apparently they hold Igris is very
Not a
holy.
sefer.
No, the
Why
difference is Igris is a book of advice.
No. Igris did not start off that way. Igris is the Rebbe's letters. If you want to see what the Rebbe said about certain
Chumash
things,
creativist, that
Any
means.
holy book.
But
No,
is
Chumash
it
creativist, that
no
means
like a
Tanakh.
Tanakh maybe no?
A real stuff.
No,
by the way,
Yeah,
but
that's for sure.
But in Yonei Chol, the Rebbe, no. The Rebbe said for sure not in Yonei Chol, meaning there's room to say maybe even in Yonei Kodesh also.
No,
not.
because you have to be very, very careful.
Maybe it's kedai not to
starts
use
off by
holy
saying-
books, and for sure not if it's in Yonei Chol, meaning even if it's in Yonei Mitzvah.
No, but he's saying you have to be very careful. He's saying it's your. This is.
Is there a
not-
story
no,
or
it's
a
not the
place
only
where it
way
says
we
about
say
the
it.
chassid and
Sure,
the-
No, he says you should not do it.
Right.
You should be careful.
Be careful.
Sure, don't.
For sure. Don't. Right.
The
Right.
Chassidim always put their letters in Sfarim.
But still,
The Shai want to open up the safer and to feel that this is your
What's
answer.
the
What?
difference between that and that?
No,
Maybe you should
You
hold
put it
back.
into
Maybe
a
you
safer
should hold
and then
back
you
because
then
it's
they
very.
used to
You're playing with
answer
fire
something.
with holy books.
They got it to their
Right.
But
And for
Right.
sure
Or even
not.
that's
for
the way
Yonei.
you
For
send
Chol,
the
you
question.
don't.
For sure not.
Yes.
That's where you
but
send
the other
the
stuff
question.
you could.
And then
Just
the-
don't play with fire.
Don't take it lightly.
Yeah, don't take it light.
The way it's worded is that
Even
for
for
everything
Maybe
you
she'll find one answer. You know, who gives you the right to open up
because
the
you're playing with fire.
You open
Not
a
that
you know.
Not for
It
everything
says,
you should.
before
refrain.
anything, it says a little higher that because
Interesting.
of
Also,
everything,
Gorel.
because of Sefer Kodesh, Kedai Limana, you should stay away.
No, so the word is
Obviously, without question.
What?
It says any
Being
good.
The
first
Rebbe
of all,
meant
Yeah,
that
that's
Gorel
what I'm
is-
saying.
the Chumash
The whole
goes-
stuff-
Kedai Limana is not
Gorel
not like a suggestion. Whenever saying Kedai Limana is saying stay away.
Yes, it is. That's
general,
what. That's
It's
what
like a
one
percussion
should-
house, just like stay away from anything.
Chel
Chel is without question.
But it's not
What
that
is
you're
it
not
that
allowed
it's
to.
talking
It's
about?
because
You
it's
take
so
a number
playing with
one.
fire,
So the truth
and
is-
we're
From
not
one
careful
answer, yes,
enough.
no.
So
The Rebbe
don't
there
play
is
with
quoting
fire.
from one of the
Then
greatest
for
of
sure.
our
Then they'll
Achronim.
do it.
Right, don't do it. Yeah,
Chavis Yor is a big
You
Rav in
definitely
Germany.
can't use it
willy
I
nilly.
think it's
Willy-nilly,
Kedai.
that's-
And what is the girdle?
But then again, what is
No, no,
the
so
what
the
is the
Chavis
produ-
Yor
what is
is
the
Mandy.
what does it mean by holy books?
Mandy, what's the
But he's
girdle?
pointing out
What's
there's
the
two
girdle
things.
that Rebbe's talking
There's
about?
the Sefer.
Yeah.
Hold on.
No.
There's the Sefer, there's the Gorel. The
What
Rebbe
is
puts
the
them together. Now, we know the Vilna Gaon's Gorel was to open a Sefer. So that's simply why the Rebbe puts them together, because that was the
The Rebbe's
Gorel.
not talking about that. We're talking about a different type of girdle.
Yeah, because he's
But
saying
the
for
Rebbe's saying
Chayil,
not to use a.
he's saying not to use the safer. Use Gorel though.
Oh, in the
That's what
note,
he's saying,
in the
right?
note,
Yeah.
in the note.
Yeah.
What girdles are
What is
fine,
Gorel?
fine. So the Rebbe there also quotes. There's a sefer called Chavis Yoyer. His name was Yor Chaim Bachrach. He was one of the greatest scholars of the last 500 years. He lived in the 1600s in Germany, and his opinions are very, very important and very weighty. And he writes, he's a big fan for Gorels. By the way, Rav Avadia Yosef has a whole tshuva. If you're on a boat and the boat's about to sink, can you make a Gorel like they did by Yonah? Halacha l'maaseh. It's a whole discussion. I have another shiur on it. Could you make a Gorel and throw someone off the boat?
How do you make the girl?
Hold on. So the Chavis Yori was a big fan of Gorels. No, Pashut, you put numbers in a hat and take out.
There's a
Like,
system.
like the
What does it
Kohanim.
mean?
The Kohanim did it in the base of
Literally.
Mikdash with
Put
sticks.
names in a hat and you pluck it. Mama says it. Just like they did in the base of
Yeah,
Mikdash by
sticks.
the two goats in the base of Mikdash.
One.
Yeah, they did it with
This
fingers.
is not Zazel, and this is.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
Mama
they
piece
did it
of
with
paper.
cards.
Moshe did it with Moshe did it with
Yeah.
fingers.
One, oh yeah, no, that's the second part. They did 1 and 2.
It says
Yes.
But then they also had
Yes.
sticks that they
Another
pulled
one
out.
says-
Wasn't there sticks?
that's the girl.
Buy or not buy?
I thought
Buy
there
or
was
not buy?
something else
Pick
with
it up.
sticks.
And that's what the Rebbe says. Mina
So-
Shamayim.
so-
Yipi Shamayim.
so-
Fingers, it was like the
That's
game
the
like,
opinion of the
what's it
Chavis
called?
Yori.
No, you put 1 or
Many will
2.
disagree.
You can put 1 or
The
2
Rebbe did
fingers.
say-
It wasn't just 1 finger. You can put more and more because they had to.
In this
mix it up.
paragraph in number 6 on the right,
I did fingers and then you count.
this is
all
not
fingers.
unanimous. The Rebbe is quoting.
What's the context of before?
Everybody put it
Oh,
on, and then you always do any, meeny,
Okay,
miny, mo.
speaking about.
I don't want to go behind him. I know where it's going to end. If you know there's 10 people,
It's pretty pro. It's pretty pro.
but the kids always used to do it. Yeah, it's odds and evens.
Where this fits in.
Hold on, okay. Let's wrap up. Let's wrap up.
No,
Let's wrap up. It happens to be
To go and look.
that
It matters.
in the Reb Shlomo Kluger in the times of the Tzemach Tzedek said, when it comes to
Go,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
'cause
Reb
I-
Shlomo-
English is the problem.
what?
This is pretty good.
Why?
It's a problem.
It's a holy book.
No.
Holy books.
No.
No, you're referring to
Tanakh.
Yeah, this is Sifrei Kodesh.
No, and then could stay away also.
Ula Kedai.
That's a strong.
No, because
Don't do it.
because he shouldn't have said Shara Ifanim. He should have said make a girl, but Shara
Mendel.
Forim.
Mendel.
Okay, so
Ula means you have to be really.
Right, no, that's a
careful
proof.
about it.
If it's only Tanakh, he could have said use Shara Forim.
right.
Shara Ifanim is no books. Exactly. Yeah,
What
yeah,
does
yeah.
Sifrei Kodesh mean?
No, but the Rebbe says make a girl b'shar other ways. He doesn't say other books. He says other ways.
Right.
The hat.
Yeah, he doesn't say you could put it in the Friedrich Rebbe's Igros Kodesh.
But what? So could you put it in a dictionary?
They found it.
It's not a holy book.
Not a holy book. So why other ways? Because he's saying the fact that he says other ways is limiting
Close
books.
to and only books.
Yeah, Mamash. See,
I don't know, but that's why I'm asking. Does Sifrei Kodesh mean only like the canon,
Right.
or is it some a
It's
mafarish?
funny, right? Because in actual Sikha, the Rebbe seems to be very pro the whole thing, and then boom, here he comes and says,
Yeah.
I want to hear you say no.
Not so fast.
I just want to know if it's called a
I
holy
want to
book.
hear you say no. When you answer no, then
What's
you
the
can
Rebbe
come
It doesn't mean that it's the whole thing.
Even Ulai, maybe it's worth it not to do it. By the way, most people that write,
Speak of the machine.
It
That's
says
it.
something like that. Does that mean?
I said, maybe it's kedai not to do it. Anyhow, so
It's to enlighten, further enlighten.
Okay.
Does that mean like don't?
Reb Shlomo Kluger, the big Rav in the Talmud Tzedek, does have a tshuva where he says like this: there's a difference to make a goyrul to know what the future is, versus to make a goyrul of whether someone should become a chazan, who should be chazan, a goyrul of which goat's going to go to the azazel, which goat to the. To make a girl to decide something is okay, but he says to make a girl try and figure out the future, that's when you get into nichus,
You're not
which
figuring out the
is hard. So then,
How do you-
I know, like opening a safer to decide.
I was saying by Amazon or by Google.
Right. That's what the Rebbe's mashma. You can do a gyro.
No, that's fine, but like to try and figure out the future
Right.
is a problem. But wait a second, deciding
supposed
what
to buy
do
Amazon
is
and it
figuring
won't
out
be
your
that
own
great.
destiny. So it's
Maybe
a
it
very
would have been
difficult
greater there, but
design.
you were supposed to.
Anyhow, I want to get to the Rogachover. We're finished. This Rogachover is mind blowing. We're going to do it fast.
Don't do it so fast.
Actually, the third option.
There are 3 pieces here.
Right.
The Rogachover.
Abstain.
Are we
Okay.
at the?
Yeah, but the home run.
The 7 minutes.
Less than 10 minutes. The Rogachover. Actually, to understand the Rogachover, you got to go back to number 1 and see Tosfos. Tosfos says a very simple point, but it revolutionized the whole story.
I knew you didn't put
Our
it.
goyim, exactly.
Put it there for nothing.
Yeah, no. It's like I just did an escape room. I was going crazy because on the one hand, you think everything has to be there for a reason, right? But actually, half the stuff was there for no reason. I was going crazy.
That's great.
Yeah, you never know what they put you just to throw you off, or anyhow, I'm a sugar. And I couldn't get out of the first room.
The baseboard.
Anyhow. Are goyim allowed to do magic? It's not one of the 7 averos. In Masechta Sanhedrin, the Gemara says, according to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, goyim are not allowed to do kishuf, sorcery. Rabbi Yosi adds not only sorcery, but all the black arts, including nichush, divining. Goyim can't do that. So wait a second. That means Eliezer couldn't do it. So Tosfos says, go back to number 1. Tosfos asked what everybody's been asking. The Im Tomer, how could Eliezer have done nichush? According to the opinion of Sanhedrin, that anything written together with sorcery, a ben noach is usher to do, how could Eliezer have done it? Says Tosfos, and this is the bombshell. Tahu Tana, the opinion that holds that a goy can't do nichush will say, Eliezer did not give her the bracelets until he first asked her who she is. First he asked her, then he gave the bracelets. It says he first gave the bracelets, Ein muktum muchbatur, out of order. And the proof is because when Eliezer told it over to the family, he flips it around. Says Tosfos that was the real way.
Everybody else explains it the other way.
Exactly.
So he didn't.
Hold on. Okay, that's a good point. There's an arichas about that as well. Hold on, wait. So Tosfos says that really Eliezer didn't do any nichush. So the Maharsha says what? Rav in the Gemara says Eliezer did nichush.
Yeah.
So the Maharsha says Rav holds goyim are allowed to do nichush.
Yeah.
It's only Rabbi Yosi who says not. In other words, what Tosfos is doing is saying like this: if you hold the goy can't do magic or nichush, you have to say Eliezer first asked her who she is, and then obviously he's going to, this is the girl, she's from the family. If you hold the goy is allowed to do nichush, then you're going to hold like Rav that Itaka did nichush.
But it's a Tashaf Maisa. He either did it this way or he did it that way.
Yeah.
However, well, you have a steer in Chumash, right? The way you told her, which one is it? It's a machlokes. So what does the Rambam Taka hold? Does the Rambam hold goyim are allowed to do nichush? So the Kesef, on number 2, there's also on the side there, I put the commentary of Rabbi Yosef Kaira on the Rambam, the Kesef Mishnah, where he says this in the beginning. He says the Rambam holds goyim are allowed to do magic. The Kesef Mishnah says, look at the Rambam in Hilchos Malachim. The Rambam says there's 7 things they can't do. The Rambam adds they can't graft different trees and they can't have different animals working together. The Rambam doesn't write castration, which is one opinion in Sanhedrin, and the Rambam does not write magic. So the Rambam holds goyim are allowed to do nichush. So according to the Rambam, did Eliezer do divination? He did. It's not a problem. The Ravid holds a goy can't do divination. That's why the Ravid said, how could you say that? In other words, what Tosfos does is, he opens up a whole new ball game. That did Eliezer do nichush or not? It depends. If he was allowed to, then he did, like the Rambam. If he can't, like the Ravid, then he didn't. So the Rogachover says like this. He says,
Pretty good answer for the Rambam.
right. So the Rambams are simple. Here's the thing. I'm going to start like this. While Rivka was busy feeding the camels, Eliezer says, V'ha'ish mishtoyla, he was waiting. What was he waiting for? The Rogachover learns Eliezer was busy figuring out in his mind, I'm a ben noach, I'm a goy. Am I restricted in doing divination or am I allowed to? He wasn't sure. If he's allowed to do divination, then he'll rely on his omen and he'll give her the bracelets and then ask her for her ID. If he's not allowed to do divination, he'll first have to. But what's this based on? How is Eliezer going to figure out if he's allowed to do nichush or not? It depends if there's hashkocha protos on goyim. The Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim says on animals Hashem only has a general hashkocha. On the species, not the individual animal. Now, not that Hashem doesn't know, knowledge He has, but the hashkocha, to care, It's only on the species, the Rambam
Who says
The
it?
Rambam. Now, the Baal Shem Tov obviously
Baal Shem Tov,
disagrees,
yeah.
but the Rambam's opinion is, but on a Yid, and anything to do with a Yid, the Eibishter has particular hashkoch on every detail. So Yid and animals not. What about Goyim? The Rambam casually left out Goyim. So says the Rogachover like this. Why can't you do magic? Or why can't you divine? If you're divining that if this happens, you're deciding your own fate. What do you mean? God decides. Yeah, if the Eibishter is mashkiach on you as an individual, there's no place for you to divine. But if there's no hashgacha pratis on me, it means my fate is not really under the Eibishter does not decide my fate for me, so then I can figure it out myself.
The Rambam
So
believes
Eliezer-
that it's related to a Yid. It would be Ashkacha.
Okay, but all right, but Avraham was also a Ben Noach at the time. They weren't really Yidden. Right, good point. That's a good point. That's true. No, but in the Rambam's opinion, the Rambam holds a goy doesn't have, but the Rogachover says Eliezer wasn't sure.
Got it.
Now, by the way, in number 9 is from the Rogachover in his commentary on Chumash in Parshas Bahar on the Haftarah. The Rebbe quotes this in Sichos. The Rogachover says, there's a debate in Sanhedrin, if you hear a goy curse out the Eibishter, God forbid, do you have to tear kriya? For a Yid, you have to tear your clothes. What about a goy? It's a debate. It's a debate in Gemara. In Yerushalmi, look at number line, in the first line, Va'ayim b'Yerushalmi in Sanhedrin, where there it says you do have to tear, and it learns from a pasuk where Hashem says, I am the God of all flesh. The Tzarech in number 9, second line, you have to tear when you hear a goy bench Hashem, means curse Hashem. And the source is from a pasuk where Hashem says, I rule over all flesh. So the Rogachover explains, Rason Lemar, that pasuk proves that goyim have hashgacha pratis. They're not absent like the Ravid holds. What's he talking about? The Rambam and Ravid have a debate. If you shecht an animal, a goy shechts an animal. If the animal is considered to be shechted, there's no tumah. There's no tumah to it. But if it's like it died on its own, there's tumah. The Rambam holds the goy shechted it was shechted. Minat Torah, there's no tumah. But because you're not allowed to eat from a goy shchita, the Chachamim consider the animal tameh. The Ravid said, what, a goy can't shecht? A goy is nobody. A goy is just part of the general nation. He's not somebody that is actually significant. And if a goy shechts, it's like the animal died on its own. It's tameh biblically. The Rogachover learns what's the Rav and Rambam's debate. Is there hashgacha pratis on the goy? Does that individual goy make a difference? And the Rogachover learns that's the same debate. Do you have to tear kriya when a goy curses God? He says because he says in the second last line, right, and he adds a strange thing. He says if the goy taka curses God, he acts like an animal. He removed himself from the hashgacha pratis. That's why you have to tear kriya. If a goy was under hashgacha pratis, so when he curses God, you've got to tear kriya because the guy has now torn himself away from the Eibishter. The opinion that holds you don't have to tear holds that the guy never had hashgacha pratis. To now go to number 10. Says the Rogachover, go about 10 words in. Why was it what?
What was just a summary there?
No, that the two debates, the debate of the Rambam and the Ravid of whether when the goy shechts it counts, and the debate in Gemara whether you have to tear kriya when a goy curses Hashem, is all depends if there's hashgacha pratis on goy. It's the same. Right. Right. So look what he says in number 10, the end of the first line. He quotes Taisus and Chulun. We saw that. He quotes the Rambam. Look in the second line, Ayin Sham Ba'asogis, that's the Ravid. Says the Rogachover, Im Geder Nachash Laman Da'amr Ben Noach Muzar al Kishuf. If you say a goy can't do magic and can't do nichush, so what's going on with Eliezer? Eliezer was unsure. Eliezer wasn't sure first to give her the bracelets or to ask her who she is. What does that depend on? Whether a goy can do magic or not. Im kahai gavna yeshna begeder hashgacha. Is there hashgacha pratis on a goy? If there is, and he has no right to decide his own fate, God's deciding it for him. Okay, good question. Yeah, good question. Oz at that point his muzar al kishuf, and then he has some fancy philosophical words because it looks like you're trying to change your destiny through the tricks of nature, but God is deciding for you. But ve'im loy in the fourth line in the beginning, if the goy and Eliezer are not under hashgacha pratis, then he's allowed to figure out his own destiny. He's mutter. And that's what it means, machrish. He said, unbelievable. The pasuk says Eliezer was waiting. Machrish l'das, he wanted to know, was Hashem matzliach darkoi? Was the Eibishter making my path successful? Was God looking after me as an individual? If he was, then I can't do the omen. Then I first have to ask her who she is. Ach mikol makom acher kach ichriya. What was Eliezer's maskana?
Well, according to the one that he gave first.
Well, the way he learns is Eliezer was machriya that Ben Noach does not have ashkacha pratis, and therefore he's allowed to divine. Ben Noach ein muzer al zeh, and therefore, you know what Eliezer did? He betrothed her, right? Va'asa ma'is identisa, and based on his own omen, he acted. V'kitchen, he actually engaged her. How old was Rivka at the time? It's a debate in Medrash Rabbah if she was 3 or 14. And Ki'ata, because now she's 14 years, like Taisa says in Yavamas, okay. The point of that is, if she's 14 years old, she can accept the Kiddushin herself. The point of the Rogachover is Eliezer reached a conclusion that he has no Ashkacha Pratis, so he can decide his own fate.
I was thinking of that in general. How could you even say that he gave her Kiddushin before they went home?
Right.
According to the one
right. So, that's a great question. So, if she was 14, like Taisa says, then that would make sense. Oh, but then he says, unbelievable. You're going to be licking your fingers, not just from the strawberry. Ach mikoma, look what happens.
So I took a bite. It was
when Eliezer came home, what does Lavan tell him? Come into my house, the one who's blessed by God. He was telling him, you are under Ashgacha Pratis. So you know what Eliezer did? He had to switch it around. He said, first I asked her, and then I gave. Because otherwise he'd be incriminating himself. Look what he looks at, read it inside. He says, and fascinating. Afterwards, Bisman Shesiprazil, when he told it to them, and Lavan says, you are Baruch Hashem, and he sent it to Yerushalmi. I can tell you Yerushalmi later. The Lavan Amar, you are benched by God. Gam ben Noach is Geder Ashkochel Yoina, from Etznex God.
Lavan was also a big,
basic thing. Well, what happened was, the pasuk says Rivka came running to Lavan. What did Rivka say? Rivka showed Lavan the jewelry, and then she told Lavan what Eliezer said. Meaning, she told Lavan, first Eliezer betrothed me, then he asked me who I was. This guy's a diviner. He's a magician. He can't do that. It's Chayiv Misa. You can't trust the guy.
So Lavan wanted to trust him because he wanted his money. So he said, no, you're blessed by God.
So Lavan already heard from Rivka what he did. So Lavan's like, you're Baruch Hashem. You're benched by God. The Eibishter cares about you as an individual. Therefore, you can't decide your own fate. How did you act on the Oman and give her the bracelets? So Eliezer flipped it. So therefore he flipped it and said, Rivna. Therefore he flips it. Because he was worried they would kill him. Now, and he quotes the Yerushalmi in Kiddushin. The Yerushalmi says a goy can be killed from his own admittance. It's a debate between the Rambam and the Chinuch. The Rambam holds a goy needs a one witness to testify. The Sefer Chinuch holds a goy can incriminate himself. So Eliezer would. Therefore, that's why he flipped it around.
That's the story.
Because
but that's
Lavan,
assuming that Lavan was righteously accusing
assuming
him.
Lavan was a big goy.
Yeah, and he was righteously assuming.
Yeah, he was a big guy, and then he felt God loves me, God cares about me.
Yeah.
It just happened, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe, listen, he's Rivka's sister at the end of the day. Rivka's his sister.
According to some, Lavan was Bilam. We had a share about that, right? And Bilam was a Navi.
He's a Navi.
Hashem came to Lavan in a dream.
Yeah.
And Vayetze, the guy's not a simple fellow.
He had to say
God speaks to him in the dreams.
Right.
How many of us?
Bilam?
Yeah, another shir.
It's
a long shir.
That was in the Pinchas
And then he
one.
came afterwards to
That
curse his vengeance?
That was the Pinchas shir.
He was
He's also you were Bilam then. 1 second, and then he came afterwards to curse his grandchildren?
That's what the Targum Yonason says.
That's his grandchildren.
That's why Bilam said, Hashem benched, how could he curse? Meaning, I've benched a Yid in the past. When he was loving, he benched the family, right, in Vayetze. I'm a flip-flop, I want to change my mind. But God, Hahu Amar V'lo Yeshivena, God doesn't change his mind. Anyhow, so it's a fascinating twist in the whole story.
It is, it's fascinating. But it's wild that Lavan is attacking him for doing something
That's
wrong.
where Eliezer flipped it. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Lovin just wanted an excuse to kill him.
No, but Lavan...
Eliezer, where he says a little bit more about... he said that Rivka told over to Lavan that he gave the bracelets, and then he asked me who I was. In other words, she was telling him this guy's a
That's why he
sorcerer.
switched to food, because he knew this. I
And
love
yes, he's
that.
kind of just
There you
repeating
go.
it.
That's a good word. Laban wanted to kill him because of being the diviner.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's
the
so
food.
that's
why
it's not that he was
scared.
a
He switched the
tzaddik.
story. He also switched the plates quickly, not because he knew. He was scared.
It's not that he was a tzaddik trying to do the right thing. He was trying to get him a death penalty.
I don't know. This seems worse than saying that all this stuff was a vision. Like you're really like.